as Democrats in the state, we've probably spent those dollars and been a lot more careful about how they're spent, and things like that. And if we're focusing on people and focusing on put those dollars in the right space, I think that's how we're gonna do it. And looking at the most effective way to use our budget and things like that.
I think services are more important than the money orientation that
Yeah.
the Republicans constantly stress.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my opinion.
Right, and one of the issues that I've had a lot of experience is in like the prevention side of alcohol and drug. And right now we don't spend any state money on prevention, it's all federal money. And I think one of the statistics, and I'm not completely sure, I think every dollar you put into prevention, you save like $7 on treatment side. So we're putting a lot of state money into the treatment side. If we were gonna focus at least some of it onto prevention, we would save long term.
You're not one of those people that want to override the vote of people, right?
No.
That really kicked me off.
I strongly believe in the will of the people. And, one of the things that I also believe in is really getting information out there to voters. And I know there's a few different organizations that are really working on educating voters and making sure that voters know everything too. But yes, I strongly believe in the will of the people. And I'm proud that South Dakota was the first state to bring in the IM process, the initiated measure process. And that's something that we need to be proud of.
And referring to those initiated measures, I believe that one has passed muster with the Secretary of State. There's two that have passed,
Yeah, I think
and that's one of them.
I believe you're right.
The round 2 of initiated measure 22.
And I believe it's coming back as a constitutional amendment and not a measure this time.
Right.
So.
We tried to remove some of the things that the opposition had huge problems with, which of course was the funding
Yes.
or the taxing. So let's have some other questions for today. Don't make this easy for them.
Well, how do you feel about the measure increase in legislators' pay? Do you think they're paid enough? Or not?
I think that, legislators currently probably aren't paid enough for the time that they do spend. However, when we're looking at a stop increase on state employees and not getting an increase for their insurances and some of these other things, I think those need to probably be priorities over legislative pay. I would agree that, legislative pay certainly isn't a lot. Most people can't afford, most people my age would not be able to be out in here. And I do think that an increase would help other people that are younger and diversified backgrounds to run for office.
I believe it's $6,000 a year annually plus the per diem. So when you think about that, if that's your sole income, it could be tight. But your answer is good, Jenae.
Senator, I think Mickelson has legislation in the hopper to make it extremely hard for ballot issues such as amendments to the Constitution to be very difficult to get on the ballot. What's your opinion there?
I don't know exactly what Representative Mickelson is bringing. I know that there was a summer study on the issue, and I have heard a couple of presentations about what that summer study came out of. And from what I've heard from the summer study, they all seem like fairly reasonable changes. Now, if Mickelson's ones are different, I don't know. My understanding, the ones that came out of the study, they were looking at needing, I think, a little more percentage for constitutional amendments versus initiated measures. There were some talk about having like an oversight committee to look over those, make sure there's no constitutional issues with the different laws. And I believe there was also maybe a wait period put on from when legislators can change those laws. So I think those are all fairly reasonable compromises to what we've seen in the process and making sure that, you know, I fully believe in putting things on the ballot as people and things, but we also need to make sure it's good quality. So, so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's,
Well, I believe
Yeah.
that's the second, that's the two that have come out so far, is
Yeah.
Nicholson's and the IM 22 revisions are the
Yeah.
only two that the Secretary of State
Yeah.
has validated.
right, but I don't know what he has in the hopper as far as like bills go.
My second question is, Governor Dugard came out with his State of the Union address and said, you know, it's gonna be a very meager budget, et cetera, no pay raise for second year in a row for state employees. What other funding mechanisms do you think South Dakota needs to incorporate besides relying totally on sales tax and fees?
I think we can all agree that our current tax system probably isn't the most sustainable. And also tends to be really regressive in nature where it affects, you know, people of lower income, you know, of higher income. There are other states that have looked at this same issue that have put on corporate income taxes and different personal income taxes, and that's resolved their issue. I don't know if that's right for South Dakota or not. You know, we're heavily reliant on sales and property taxes, you know, which also affect our agricultural industry. And, you know, that's something that, you know, some individuals in the room have looked at for a long time. So, I certainly believe that we do need a full study of really what's going on. It was in the, I wanna say 1960s that Nebraska was looking at this same thing and saying like, we can't rely on this. We can't sustain ourselves on sales and property taxes. And they ended up going to a corporate income tax structure, and they were afraid all the insurance companies in Omaha would move out, but they're still there and still doing okay. So I think there's definitely some things to explore there.
I think a change in the political color and nature of South Dakota would do a lot for tourism and other sorts of activities. I know if I lived somewhere else and was looking at this, I wouldn't want to come here.
Yeah.
It's so negative and it's so hostile.
Yeah, and that's one of the
Happens
things.
to be my home, however.
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying.
mean, I love South Dakota for so many things, but we haven't been in the news for all those wonderful things. We've been in the news for some negative things, so I'd love to bring some positivity back to the state and highlight some of the great things that we do.
I think one of your biggest issues should be corruption and cover-up,
Yes.
Yeah.
because there's a lot of it.
Yes, and that's certainly something that, you know, I care deeply about, is being transparent in myself, and making sure that, you know, we're accountable and things like that, and we're holding everybody accountable, from state contractors. You know, I work for someone who has a state contract. You know, we have to file all these reports and do all of these things, and why other individuals wouldn't have to do that working for a different state agency is beyond me. So,
Nobody went to jail? No, just a few died.
Well, wind energy.
I love wind energy. Yeah, I think that that's one of the greatest things. We're super windy here in South Dakota, and we can take advantage of that. And I was very glad to see in the news that the wind turbine plant here in Aberdeen won't be closing, and they did get a contract. And I'm hoping that as a state we can continue to support that. I think I saw today when I was looking over a couple of bills that there's going to be a PUC bill that extends the length of time from 6 months to 12 months that they can review wind tower fields and things like that. So we'll be looking at that and seeing, but I think that's something we do need to support as a state and go from there.
On the wind issue, interesting you mentioned that, because I know the PUC just in October, they turned down a wind farm in
Yes,
Clark
in
County, in
Clark.
your district. Some of that, at least that hearing, seemed to bring up some actual local opposition. People worried about the, I don't know, flicker noise, whatever, from the wind turbines. What would you say to those local folks to maybe persuade them that no, wind power is a better option for Clark County than some of those opponents are saying?
Yeah, so District 2 is really interesting, because yes, there was a wind turbine plant that did just get turned down due to setback laws. And then, you know, we've also got pipelines running through and, you know, different electricity grids being upgraded by Groton and things like that. So I guess my you know, spiel to someone in Clark County who may not like the wind turbines, and I've heard all the arguments from, you know, the noise, the lights and things like that, which I understand, but as a long-term sustainable solution, wind turbines are certainly more sustainable. It's going to keep our air cleaner. It's going to, you know, not use up all of those fuels and things like that. I think as a farm girl and growing up on the farm, you know, farmers are the original conservationists, right? And we want to protect that land, and we want to make sure that it stays in the condition that it does. And I think one of the ways is wind energy and supporting that.
Jenae, it's pretty early in your campaign. Meandered, non-meandered waters probably is a little more north of your immediate district now that you're running in. Have you got any thoughts or any heads up or had any contacts? I see the governor wants to push the sunset clear out. There is some opposition, but they will be looking at it this session, I think, for sure.
They will be,
And
yeah.
Have you had any basic contact from people in your area yet on that issue?
I have not talked to anybody in my area on that issue. There are a couple of lakes, Redfield Lake being one of the main ones, probably in District 2, that's affected by that. But I haven't heard much. You know, the legislature made their decision last June. It was a solution that nobody liked. At the time, you know, it seemed about as good a compromise as they could get in the short time frame that they could. I don't know what will happen to make it better. You know, it's a tough fight between, you know, landowners and hunters when we're talking about, you know, tourism that brings in a lot of state dollars as well as agriculture and land ownership. So no, I haven't heard anything in that. I'm looking forward to hearing those discussions again. I wasn't able to go to any of the summertime meetings, but I did go to special session and listen to that discussion a little bit, so we'll see.
Just a little word, keep your eyes open in what they call Section 8 lakes.
Okay.
As it goes forward. I think there, I'm not saying all of them, but I got acquainted with a Section 8 lake that had no meandered water line, never did have. And it was taken over, all the flooded areas taken over by the general public, and it's all over private land. There was no meandered water on that.
Thank you.
Do you have any opinion on this pipeline issue, the one on the east, the Keystone one? That we just had in 2016, we had that leak at Freeman, and now we just had this one this fall over here, a few miles from here. And there's an engineer that basically got terminated because he was saying that he thinks there's more of this is going to happen on this pipeline. So, and does the state have any recourse? Are they getting anything for this, for the use of the roads and things like that when they can do the cleanup?
Yeah, my understanding is they're not getting anything from the roads. I could be wrong for that, but Keystone has paid for the cleanup. I did talk to a couple of people from Freeman after that first leak happened, and they were completely pleased about how the cleanup happened. They took care of it all, everything like that. I haven't heard much about like how the cleanup is going, you know, north of here. I think when that pipeline was getting built, a lot of us had concerns about the width of the pipe, about, you know, cleanup funds and things happening like that. And I think we may continue, if we do continue to see that, I think we have to look at, you know, holding Keystone accountable. As long as they are coming in and cleaning up the soil and taking care of that, you know, that's them being responsible. And I hope that that will continue. But as far as the roads and stuff go, I think that is a real concern that we'll need to address, as far as, you know, making sure those counties have some funds to look at that. And so, yeah.
Jenae, I may not be completely up to speed on this, but I think the issue down in Nebraska on our border is not settled about the other pipeline continuing. And we've seen what happened last year up in North and South Dakota. My feeling from watching what happened in South Dakota after that is that our government is more concerned with preventing our civil rights to demonstrate than they are with making sure the interlopers are coming in and putting this poisonous black snake through our property. And so I just want to express that, and I know I'm not alone, and I know if it comes to it, we're going to have the world's natives out here too, and I would love it, because damn it, we have, you know, they've just about wasted our earth from under us as a whole. And not only the resources, but the people. It's all over the world. And we need to stand strong against that and not get all fighting mad and our hackles up and say, no, you can't park on the roads, and, you know, don't come any closer, we'll shoot you.
Right.
That kind of militarization,
It's scary.
it's terrible, it's horrifying. And the truth is coming out, but it's awfully darn slow and very painful. So that's my opinion on that.
Jenae, there's one area that we haven't talked about yet, and it's something that's come forward greatly in the last few months, and that's the Me Too movement.
Yes.
And the discrimination, and we now are realizing with women in the workforce, and I was just wondering what your feelings and your comments are on what's happening right now with young women and older women.
Yeah, and I would even say that it's, you know, it's happening with young women and older women, and, you know, there's been a few men as well who have been affected by sexual harassment in the workplace and things like that. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about it, what happens in peer and things like that. But, you know, I don't want to focus on whether it's happening in peer, because I really think it's happening in peer just as much as it's happening anywhere else. And so I think the important part of what's happening is remembering that we need to have safe ways for women and men to be able to go and report that. You know, what that means for maybe me as a young woman would be able to talk to another female about that issue, and not only being able to go to a male superior and having different options. You know, maybe that means for a male colleague being able to talk to, you know, someone other than their direct supervisor about the issue, and having someone who's not been in their leadership position to go and talk to about those issues. I think it's also important to keep in mind that, you know, we have to be respectful of everyone in the workplace, and it's a good reminder about having those safe policies and places to go and things like that. I think it's been difficult to hear all of these different stories and all of these things going on. You know, maybe many of us suspected or knew, but, you know, we didn't want to believe that it was real and those things were happening. So, yeah, it's heartbreaking. I think that the legislature in particular is moving at least in the right direction by having sexual harassment training for the workplace. You know, I've talked to a few legislators about this, and it's just like any other workplace. Anywhere else you go to work, you get a sexual harassment training, you've got a manual, you know who you're supposed to report to, you know what happens, and those processes are in place. So currently there are none of those processes in place. So I think having a clear guideline for anybody working in the Capitol or working with legislators is really important. But that goes for all workplaces, all nonprofits, all government agencies, having those people to go and report to, whether it be, sometimes a variety of people, and having those different options in place, I think is really important. So it actually also having those mental health services available for individuals, and more social workers to talk to people if they need to talk to them, and make sure that women and men feel comfortable when they've been put in that position.
I just want to compliment you for actually including the men, and this is my concern is, we're hearing a lot about the sexual harassment towards women, but there are men I know that have had it too, but they're not talking.
Yeah.
And in our society, how are we going to make it easier for the men to admit that, I know there's women that have done things, because I've heard it, used men to get their way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's not recognized as, because men are stronger, they're the ones that are physically stronger, so
Right.
therefore they're the ones doing it, not the women.
Yeah, there's still some societal and stigma things there that as a society, we're working towards, but yeah, I always make sure to include men because I know of the same situations, so.